Of course.
First question.
Mr. Minister, it's a pleasure to speak to you, sir. The first question I have is, as I speak to people here in Moscow, there's a perception that the US has changed. They're describing the US completely differently under President Trump. Do you think the US as a culture, not only the perception, but do you think has it fundamentally changed and their perception of Russia and President Putin?
I think what is going on in the United States is a return to normalcy. The United States has always been the country of two big parties who competed between themselves, who changed ownership of the White House. But the division during my years in the United States, which is starting from 1981, I've been there several times, serving for a long period. Compared to that time, the division now is absolutely striking. On that occasion, the main dividing line between the Democrats and the Republicans was more taxes, less taxes, abortions, things which would be part of a normal Christian life, and within this Christianity values, the entire politics were built, arguing with each other, but within the values which everybody accepted. With the introduction of neoliberal ideas, neocon ideas, but mostly neoliberal ideas, the divide became deeper, wider, and culmination was the first election of President Trump, which he himself admitted was a surprise to him, and he wasn't really getting ready. Now he is ready, and it is clear how many, 49 days yet, and such a rich agenda is already thrown into the public domain. So this split motivated, first of all, by the departure from Christian values, by the leadership of the Democratic Party, in my view, by promoting without any limits the LGBTQ, whatever comes next. Same, one WC for any gender. I once found myself in Sweden where the OSCE was conducting a ministerial meeting, and it was in a stadium specially arranged for the ministerial meeting, and I wanted to get out and to go out and saw WC sign, and I asked the guy who was accompanying me whether this was gents or ladies. He said everybody. I don't want any of my friends to experience this themselves. So this, and this is just, of course, a tiny manifestation of those divisions, but the America as we Rust Belt America is, of course, not very much keen to embrace those values, and the persistence with which, fanatic persistence with which those values were promoted to the population certainly made quite a number of people to decide for themselves that this is not what they want, and they supported Donald Trump. So it's back to normalcy as we understand normalcy. We are Orthodox Christians. The values are basically the same, though Catholicism now is becoming more and more deviating to the new trends which we cannot understand and which we would not accept. But the fact that a normal administration without any, unchristian ideas came to power, and the reaction was such an explosion in the media, in the politics all over the world, is very interesting and is very telling. When we met, I hope I don't reveal any secret, when we met in Riyadh with Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz and Steve Witkoff, they suggested the meeting and they said, look, we want normal relations. Normal relations in the sense that the foundation of the American foreign policy under the Trump administration is national interest of the United States. This is absolute and without any discussion. But at the same time, we understand that other countries also have their national interests. Right. And those countries who have their national interests and don't play into the hands of somebody else's interest, right, we are ready to have serious discussion. It is very well understood, they told us, that countries like the United States and Russia would never have their national interest the same. They would not coincide maybe even 50 or less %. But when they do coincide, this situation, if we are responsible politicians, must be used to develop this simultaneous and similar interest into something practical which would be mutually beneficial, be it economic projects, infrastructural projects, something else. And then another message went, but when the interests do not coincide and contradict each other, again, this is then the responsible countries must do everything not to allow this contradiction to degenerate into confrontation, especially military confrontation, which would be disastrous for many other countries. Right. We told them, we fully share this logic. It's absolutely the way President Putin wants and does conduct our foreign policy. He always, since he became president, underlines in his contacts that we are not imposing anything on anyone, and that we are looking for a balance of interest. Same logic, absolutely. And some people would say, "Oh, Russia is now changing and is turning away from the East, from China, from India, from Africa." It's an illusion. And euphoria is not what should be guiding us in foreign policy. By the way, China, for decades, has relations with the United States based exactly on the formula which I just described. Mm-hmm. They sometimes call each other names, which we don't mind. I mean, we also, in modern diplomacy, are using to get to new vocabulary. But they never interrupted a dialogue. They would say, hands off Taiwan, hands off South China Sea. But let's meet and talk. It's the same approach, the same logic, which is now accepted by the Trump administration in its relationship with the Russian Federation. And I think it's only right. There are no two persons who would be 100% alike. And same with countries. And countries who can seriously influence the fate of the world, militarily, the nuclear powers in particular, of course, they have special responsibility. not to shout at each other, but to sit down and talk and say, more or less like it was handled by cowboys in many of the Hollywood movies.